Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? Great. I mean, we'll just have no way of knowing. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining this afternoon. My name's Georgia and I'm a creative producer, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what my job is, what it means, and I'll look forward to sharing some thoughts about this career. So there are a couple of things I want to chat about. I'm going to give everyone a few more minutes to join us, and we'll probably be kicking off at just after 5 past. So if you want to do a last minute coffee run or change the way you're seating so you're on something comfier, please be my guest. It's really lovely to have you all here and with us, and I'm really looking forward to sharing some advice. So a couple of things to say is that what I'll do is I'll chat a little bit about my job as a creative producer. And there's some quite sticky terminology around producing. It obviously means a million different things to a million different people. So I'll chat about the kind of producing that I do, which is largely not performances. I work largely producing the wraparound events, so talks, festivals, conferences, things like that. So I'll be able to share my experiences with you on all of that. But then I'll also talk about how I started out in the freelance world, and talk about when I transitioned, because I think it's quite helpful to hear from other early-ish career professionals about their journey and what they did. And I went freelance 2 years ago, so I'll be able to share what I've learned during that time. I'm looking across two screens simultaneously, so apologies if my eyes look distracted. I've also got a big wad of paper notes here, quite intimidatingly, which is filled with things that I'm going to tell you all about. But for those of you that have just joined, welcome. Come in, get settled, get comfy. We'll be kicking off in just a couple of minutes. Really happy to answer any questions that you've got. And also if there are particular things that you want to chat about, if you'd rather know about how to transition into a freelance career, or if you'd rather know about being a creative producer, really happy to focus on one or the other. And you can just drop those in the comments. And I say that as if that's something that I know how to do. I don't know how to do that. I'm really looking forward to just seeing them pop up. Couple of other things to say. My pronouns are she and her, and if you want any clarifications or explanations on terminology, please just let me know. This session has been programmed by the Brill King's Head Theatre as part of a series of events that they've been doing to keep us all occupied during lockdown, so thank you to them. My relationship with King's Head Theatre started probably 3 or 4 years ago. As a humble punter, came and saw some of their brilliant shows. Really excited by the work they're doing, and I've had some of the best nights in the theatre at their brilliant space. So hello, I can see you all joining and coming in. Thanks for taking a pew. Thanks for making time for me on your Friday afternoon. Looks like we've got some sunshine heading our way in London at least, so really appreciate you guys being here. We'll kick off in just a couple of minutes. So grab a last gulp of water, and if there's anything that we can discuss in particular, just give me a shout. I'm really looking forward to being here and to joining you for this. So I'll just have a sip of water. You'll notice my style might not necessarily be too slick. That's not the way I run events. They're very tight. So just for any of you who are nervous that you're hearing about how to produce live events for someone that is a waffler, you're right, but actually that shouldn't be affecting the quality of the events I put on. So to reassure you all there that you're in safe hands. And I'm also happy to chat about things that have gone wrong during live events. I've been working in the event sector for 7 years, and so just about anything that you can imagine that could go wrong has gone wrong, from emergency A&E call-outs to power cuts, and I'm really happy to share those experiences with you as well, because so much of being an events producer is also dealing with the events when they're actually happening, so we can chat about that a bit as well. Hello, welcome to all of you, those that are joining now, and apologies to those that have just heard this again on loop. I promise this is going to be the most repetitious part of the session, and it's all going to be quality gold content from here on in, so you just sit tight for just a couple of seconds, and and we'll get the good stuff really soon. Hi Simon, nice to see you, welcome, thanks for joining us. And just to mention that I'm looking across 2 screens and also quite a lot of paper. So if I look distracted, it's only because I'm focusing on the other screen. But yeah, great to be here, pumped for it. I hope you guys are too. And we've just hit 106. So I think that's a great time to start. 106, a classic time for an event to start. So let's get underway. So hello, welcome. My name is Georgia Attlesey and I'm a creative producer. My whole shtick as a freelancer is about making big ideas more accessible through culture. So in the last 7 years, I've worked with a number of organisations to open up big, tricky subjects to audiences. So I started off working with organisations as an employee. So my first job was as a researcher on a philosophy festival where I demystified philosophy for the world's only philosophy and music festival, which takes place down in Wales. And then after realising that I knew how to make philosophy, this big turgid academic subject, easier to get your head around, I then looked for a new challenge, and that new challenge was about how to get young people engaged in poetry. So took a deep breath and went and worked with the brilliant poet in the city who are based in King's Place in London, and who have for the last few years and actually increasingly since I've left done some really, really phenomenal things. So I worked programming their events, and we had some great achievements. We programmed a big event at St Paul's Cathedral that was all about opening up the cathedral to new audiences. And that actually became the biggest event for members of the public at St Paul's Cathedral that didn't involve a monarch. So that felt like a remarkable achievement, particularly when what we were doing was programming poetry. So it was really exciting to be able to do that with them. After feeling like I'd got my head around poetry and cracking poetry and how to diversify poetry audiences, I then thought, what could possibly be harder than poetry? And the answer was climate change. I see some love for Poet in the City. I completely agree. I'm here with you, and I'm a really, what an awesome organisation. They programme some of the best events out there. So my next challenge was climate change. So I decided to go and work with Julie's Bicycle on how to reposition climate change and how to make it a compelling subject for people that work in the arts community. So making sure that venues are using renewable energy. And my job there was to programme live events, which was to make it an inspiring subject. So often climate change is one of the things at the bottom of people's kind of job descriptions, and actually it's a really scary and really intimidating subject to get your head around. So I was programming events for the sector to try and open up that subject and try and change the way that we think about it. And so that was a wonder, and it was a really brilliant thing to be able to work with them. And after doing that, so after working with these incredible organisations for about 7 years, or about 6 years, I then decided to go freelance, and that felt like a bit of a plunge. And since then, I've worked with the brilliant Forward Arts Foundation, who run the Forward Prizes for Poetry. I'm currently the director of the KHT's Philanthropy Prize, which is an organisation that's about transforming attitudes to money within the arts sector. And I programme the live events for London Film School. I mentor for the Roundhouse. I've spoken everywhere from the Barbican to the Welcome Collection to the South Bank Centre about art and change, and I chair debates and host events as well. So it's quite nice to be on this side of it as well, rather than the organising side. And I guess the last thing that I want to talk to you about my background is that about 14 months ago, I decided, thinking about everything else that was happening in the sector, that I wasn't satisfied with the progress that the arts sector was making around inclusion and making arts organisations more accessible. I thought that there was a real missed opportunity in the way that organisations were chatting to their audiences and treating them when they came in for performances. And so with that in mind, I created the format Pudding, and Pudding is an opportunity for audiences to get together after performances and digest what they've seen on stage. And the goals are all around opening up these cultural institutions, these cultural organisations, and making audiences feel more welcome, Because if I've learned anything from 7 years of programming and making difficult ideas more accessible in the creative industries, is that if you don't invite people in and make them feel welcome, they won't come back, and they won't have a good time. So pudding was a way of opening up organisations, and also a way of collecting information and data about the impact that the arts have on audiences. So I use pudding as a lobbying kind of evidence base to collect information about the social impact of the arts. Obviously, the last few months have been incredibly interesting for that, because the way that we think about the civic role of the arts has changed dramatically as the sector's had to prove its worth in order to receive funding. And so actually this is something that I've been thinking about for some time, and it was off the back of conversations that I've been having with brilliant people in the sector, among them Madeleine Eunice and Delia Barker at Roundhouse, that I decided to give it a go. The idea is that you come and share some pudding, you might leave a scoop of brownie heavier, or you might meet some brilliant people that you've never met before, but it's just about consolidating your experience at art events and performances, and making sure that people are feeling involved and included. So it's all about empowering audiences, and obviously pudding's the answer to most difficult questions. So it was great to be able to slide that in there, and obviously dessert is served as part of it. So getting rid of the glass of wine and replacing that with a bit of brownie, and I really look forward to being able to do real life puddings again soon. So let's chat about creative producing. And hello and welcome to those of you that are joining. It's great to see you. Quick reminder that I'm here chatting about creative producing and how to transition your career into going freelance. My pronouns are she and her, and if anything needs additional clarification, please just let me know. Happy to go over things as well. There's a few bits and pieces that I'm going to share. I'm going to share some links. They'll probably go onto the Facebook Live page. I'm not quite sure how I can pull them across to Instagram, but I'll make sure that I repeat them with enough integrity that you can make note of them. So right, let's chat creative producing. So it is an amorphous art form that I think for a long time people didn't know what to call it. So creative producing can be used to mean people who work in theatres and who have a particularly artistic lens on the productions that they're pulling together, but it means completely different things in advertising and in film. But the way that I use the term creative producer, and the way that I refer to myself as a creative producer, is someone that basically curates and produces content. So I produce events creatively. So I work with organisations to programme events that position the ideas that they are interested in platforming in the most compelling and original way. So what that means is that I will do research, extensive research into subjects, and then think about the right kinds of people to be sharing those ideas. So I spend a lot of time thinking about whether a comedian is the best person to communicate ideas around climate change, or if a poet would be a better fit. Thinking about whether a debate makes more sense than straight up performances, or whether music should be integrated into events. And I know that this sounds amorphous and perhaps like it's cross art form, and I think the really important thing to say about our sector is that yes, and the work that I've been doing is consistently about moving between art forms. I think there's some real joy and value to be found in the mixing between these art forms, and it's been something that I've really loved sinking my teeth into. If you're here for top quality content on how to produce operas and plays effectively, I'm not your girl. There are other brilliant people out there who can do that. So I'm really happy to flag some of those. Sarah Maguire is an incredible dance producer. Hayley McGee does a really great job in theatre, and I'm really just caveating that my version of creative producing is live events, meaning wraparound events, meaning talks. And these might be things that happen in addition to artistic programming, or it might be things that happen as the sole artistic output of organisations. And as a producer, my role is to make sure that the event is the biggest success that it can be, and that means everything from the research and making sure that the most interesting people are speaking to the right language to be used to talk about the event, so making sure that the audience that we want this event to reach to come along to the event. It's about looking after ticket sales, visual merchandising, phrase I've never used before, visual identity of events, and also making sure that everyone involved in the event feels comfortable and has as a good a time as possible. Inevitably, what this means is that I spend a lot of my time on the phone to people, and they might be freelance, photographers, or they might be graphic designers and filmmakers. But it also means that I spend a lot of time chatting to people and canvassing their opinions as potential guests and speakers. That's one of the real joys of the job. I learned pretty quickly not to get starstruck or startled in the headlights by chatting to people who you've worshipped for a while. And my biggest advice for anyone that has to reach out to someone that they really admire is to underplay how much you know about them. The easiest conversations I've had are with people who are huge names in fields that I know absolutely nothing about, and I think that gives you a real fearlessness. So I strongly recommend that you under-research when you chat to people, because it means that you'll treat them more like a person and allow them to present themselves in the way that they are most comfortable presenting themselves in. And don't forget that everyone that you're in touch with about an event is ultimately someone who's just like you. So don't think that you need to treat them with any kind of special status. I mean, be polite and respectful, but I really wouldn't tiptoe or pedestal them too much. Excruciatingly awkward encounters lie that way, and quite happily, the most comfortable conversations are ones that I've kind of bumbled into without necessarily feeling like the sole kind of owner of that subject. When I've met people that I've adored, I found it much harder to keep my distance and to keep objective and talk about the event that we're working on. So another tip from me when you're producing and getting in touch with people that you admire, that maybe they're a brilliant singer, or maybe they're a really brilliant theatre company, is that they're just people trying to do their job in exactly the same way that you're trying to do your job. You might end up going for coffees, you might end up becoming mates, but it's just as likely that you'll do the event and then never see each other again. So make sure that you don't forget to make sure that there's distance between you in the event, because it can feel so passionate and it can feel so personal when you're working on things. But I really would recommend that to try and remind yourself at the end of the day that it is just how everyone is making sure that they're getting paid. So don't take the rude emails or the curt responses or the lack of responses to WhatsApp messages personally. It's a rewarding field, and there are glamorous parts of it, but please don't feel too hurt if those relationships don't end up being the blossoming friendships, or even turn into the marriages and I don't know, shared kind of camaraderie that you're hoping for. So to chat a little bit more about what my job entails, I also should probably say, which is probably an incredibly obvious thing, that there's a lot of evening work. This has perhaps been less the case during the last 4 months, where a lot of the events I work on have pivoted to being online. But most cultural programming seems to take place in the evenings or in the afternoons. So I spend the majority of my evenings in venues, in the hot, sweaty studio spaces that we all know and love and miss so much at the moment. And if I'm not an event that I've organised, I'm almost always at an event that someone else has organised, and I never stop looking for people who are exciting or that I could potentially bring into another event later down the line. I've got a list that I keep on Google Keep, which is a hard tip for those of you who are thinking about pursuing this as a career, which is to say that Google Keep is just amazing. You can just outsource your brain to it and dump everything there. And then this one sticky note, I mean, it's basically online sticky notes, and it's remarkable. So hugely recommend those of you to go and sink your teeth into that if it's new to you. And so I've got a Google Keep document that's just got all of the brilliant names that I've come across that I haven't yet found a space for. And these are everyone from kind of psychologists to there's a really incredible statistician who does infographics. And it's just worth having these brilliant names somewhere easy to find, so that when you're working on something, so if you're doing an event about climate change, or if you're working with London Film School, you can really easily go, oh yeah, I'm looking for this kind of person. And then you remind yourself of the brilliant people that you've met. And quite often there'll be the right opportunity to drop them into place. I can't tell you the tears that I've shared when I've had people on that list who have died, which is, like, I guess, a weird thing to have said, but it, you know, to have that moment where you realise that you'll never be able to, you know, the hot tears I sweated when we lost Derek Walcott. I think realising that I'd never be able to work with him was one of those real moments of heartbreak. But luckily there's loads of other platforms that he does still exist and live on in. Okay, so let's talk about curiosity and that need to be kind of magpie-ish about everything that you're consuming. I never stop, you know, hunting and scouting for people for formats. And during lockdown, there have been some really exciting formats that have emerged. Claw Leadership have been doing small group conversations, so that kind of replicate the smaller chats that we're used to having, but with strangers in coffee houses. So I've been really loving taking part in conversations like that. Coney have been using their digital prowess as restless innovators to program some really exciting work. And Tassel Stevens, who runs the company, did a really remarkable job with a show called Telephone. So it's been really interesting to watch the transformation of a real life experiences into digital ones. And I would urge you all, if you're interested about careers in the event sector, to make sure that you are soaking up all of the fantastic digital types of events that are existing out there at the moment, because there's a lot for all of us to learn when we return to our live sector about the possibility of what things can be like when we go back. I also want to chat quickly about logistics. I cannot believe how fast time is flying. I've just realised that we've just hit 20 past. So if you've got any questions, and if there's anything burning in particular about anything that I've said already, or that you want to know more about, we'll just let me know and type in comments either on Facebook Live or here on Instagram. But what I will do is I'll come to talking about my top tips for transitioning to freelance really quickly. I just want to make a very clear point about logistics. Working in the arts, we're often told, or we often are made to assume, that we are not the kinds of people that can get their head around big, meaty kind of spreadsheets, etc. And I really want to rally against the disconnect between entrepreneurialism or a business-minded approach and the creative sector. Logistics are all about all things that you can learn on the job, but it just means you have to be slightly more carefully, just take a slightly more careful and slow approach. It's a huge part of any role, and I'd really recommend people who are thinking about pursuing a job in the arts but are nervous about, perhaps worried about their timekeeping, just to be slightly conscious that these are all skills that you can learn on the job. 10 years ago, I would never have said that I'm an organised person, and now I run events to the 10-second mark. So I feel very confident this is all stuff that you can learn on the job. Please don't let it be something that you feel intimidated by. These are all skills that can and should be learnt, and I'd really urge everyone who is thinking about this but nervous about that aspect of it to still pursue it. Another great thing about working in events is that you need to problem solve really fast, and there'll be one of the joys of the job is that you might not realise that you've got a problem until you're in the middle of it. You can't plan for problems, so making sure that you're on top of events as much as possible before they take place is going to put you in really great stead. Right, I was going to chat about how I found my dream job, but I'm going to keep that really simple into a one sentence, which is the job that you are meant to do, or the job that you are so in love with, that might exist and you might not know about it. I think education systems really don't talk ambitiously enough about the incredible jobs that there are out there in our art sector. And so if there are things that you are excited by, make sure that you go and consuming them. If there are people that you're interested in when you hear them speak, go and chat to them afterwards. The worst thing that can happen is that people can say no to sharing their experience. But I would say being curious and being hungry and following the things that you're interested in will only ever serve you incredibly well. Right, let's chat about going freelance. And so I went freelance when I was 26, 27, and to those young creatives who are out there, what I want to say is that from my perspective, your 20s are for burning, your 20s are for getting things wrong, for finding out what you don't want to do, and I would urge you all to not put too much pressure on those first 10 years out of college or out of school or university. We are unencumbered, we have no responsibility, and now is the time for us to find the things that give us real joy and real pleasure. So don't worry, don't worry at all about feeling like you might waste a couple of years. Say yes to every opportunity that you get. I would really urge you all to see what direction your careers take you in, and I hope that in pursuing things that you find interesting, you'll be able to narrow down the things that you are more interested in, and then feel that you've got a kind of a very comfortable basis for then pursuing the change that you want to make in the world, which I think is at the heart of what we all try and do in the art sector. Practical steps when you go freelance. Buy a whole ton of people coffee. Buy everyone you can imagine coffee. Pick their brains. Invite them for an hour. I mean, people will be incredibly generous with their time. General rules of thumb: keep 25% of every paycheck. 25% of every paycheck. Put it aside for tax and for national insurance contributions. Similarly, if you can bear the idea, put 10% of every paycheck aside for your pension. In the freelance industries, we are not taught soon enough about pensions. They estimate for people who are born in the 90s that the nest egg that you'll need for retirement is about £1 million. And I know that will have sent shivers down a lot of your spines, and you're right, it's an intimidating amount of money. But I would urge all of you to start putting money aside, even if it's just into a savings account. There are some brilliant options available with places like Aviva, but start putting that money aside because you'll feel really grateful. And I know it feels really hard to think like long-termism, but I cannot tell you how much drama and how much pain you'll save yourself by making sure that 35% of every single paycheck you receive, you don't see a whiff of. Put it aside, please. It makes the January tax returns far less daunting, and it also it means that I mean, you're being a lot more responsible with your money. If you're being paid by PAYE, then you would know you wouldn't have access to that money. So I strongly recommend 25% for tax, 10% for pension. Use Google Keep for keeping ideas of speakers or organisations. When I was thinking about going freelance, I made this huge A4 sheet of paper that had names of organisations that I was inspired by, role titles that I thought might work for when I was positioning myself as a freelancer, and people that I thought that would advocate for me. And make sure you feel comfortable with the networks and all of the things in those things before you decide to take the plunge. You know, don't go any sooner than you're ready. And my advice as a freelancer is that I went freelance by starting to go part-time and see what would happen if I then developed a freelance career. So I started off continuing to work for one organisation on PAYE, so continued working with Brill, Julie's Bicycle, and then started pursuing freelance projects because it meant I felt reassured by having that financial security. Hold on to all of your receipts. You can expense for coffees that you buy for other people. And the other thing I'd say is think about co-working space. As freelancers, as freelancers in the arts area, I should say, we often thrive on conversation and being able to chat to people, which is one thing that you lose really quickly when you go freelance. I have found huge amounts of comfort in co-working spaces. I have a a space that's a 10-minute cycle from my front door, and it's filled with people who do jobs that are completely different to my own. But just knowing that there are other people who are trying to pursue a freelance career has been incredibly reassuring and heartening. So never stop looking for those people, and if it's something you think you can make space for, I would really encourage you to think about it, particularly on the other side of coronavirus. Just had a suggestion from John, thanks John, that says Monzo Business can apparently do pensioning and kind of siphoning that money off from your paychecks automatically, which is amazing. Okay, my last bit of freelance advice for you is plan your holiday days and make sure that you are giving yourself at least 20 days holiday days a year. As a mark of how far I have come as a scatty arts graduate 10 years ago, I now plan my workout to the day 3 months in advance. So right now, you know, coronavirus permitting, I could tell you exactly what I expected to do I'm expecting to work on the second Tuesday of September and the second Wednesday of October, and I could also tell you when my next break is. It's really easy to just keep rolling when there's work, but I really encourage you to make sure that you are chunking out time, at least 4 weeks within the year to put aside for your holiday. I'm realizing that we're going slightly over time, so I just want to say, if anyone's got any questions, this is your last chance saloon for getting them in. Otherwise, there's tons of other advice I can share. I want to talk to you about another great tip, which is I've been doing, for the last couple of years, I've been keeping a list of all the rejections I get. And this is advice that I got from the brilliant Amber Massey-Blomfield, who used to be the exec director at Camden People's Theatre. And that is to make a list of everything you apply for and to make a list of every time you get a rejection. So firstly, that takes the stigma out of rejections, and it reminds you that each one of these bits of activity is just a simple task that will help you pursue your career. But also it reminds you of all of the stuff that you've been doing. So when you think, oh, I'm exhausted, I don't understand why, I feel like I've been doing nothing, you can go back and see your list of things and go, oh, okay, well, that's actually because I've applied for 7 applications in the last week. So I would really recommend you to do that. Arden is asking, where do you find work when you're starting out? Great question, Arden. I encourage you to be as specific as possible. So a bit of advice is, when you are first thinking about going freelance, or even if you're thinking about pursuing a career in the arts at all, my advice would be to make a list of 10 organisations that you really admire and think about why you admire them. I would then spend a bit of time getting in touch with the person whose role is most similar to the one that you would like to do, and ask if you can chat to them. You'll find out very quickly that a job in radio isn't for you. I really do think that it comes back to this idea of this Google Keep list, which perhaps sounds like a cop-out, but every time you come across an interesting organisation, make a list of them, so that the next time that you do have half a day to think about what kinds of organisations you want to work with, or even the kind of work that you want to pursue if you're slightly earlier in your career, you've got a really solid foundational base and you're not just starting from scratch. There are great, I mean, it feels a little bit tricky to be talking about job opportunities now when we are on the brink of the mother of all kind of waterfall recessions. But just to say that those jobs are out there, to think creatively and pragmatically about your skill set, and the kinds of places that you're used to seeing jobs advertised, so arts jobs, Twitter, LinkedIn, will all still be the places that are advertising jobs. Think pragmatically about the industries that are going to do well on the other side of this. The film and TV industry is set to boom on the other side of coronavirus, because we have all been so hungry for the content that they've been able to pursue when we haven't been able to be in those sweaty black theatres spaces and pub theatres that we love, like King's Head Theatre. And thanks again to King's Head Theatre for hosting us and these sessions this afternoon. It's a real wonder, and I'm so delighted to be part of them. Other great places, just chat. I mean, honestly, nothing bad happens from starting conversations with people. Don't stand by that at all, actually. But if you start conversations with people, you'll be surprised about what can emerge from them. And it's all about, I would say it's all about being confident in yourself, and knowing that the other people who are out there and offering to give you their time for a coffee want you to succeed as much as you do. So always assume that everyone is best intentioned and will be looking for opportunities. And if people can help tangibly and practically, they 100% will do that. They'll be delighted to be able to put you in touch with people that they know, particularly if you have a really clear idea about what they're up to. A couple of other freelance networks that I want to remind people of. So there's a great community online called Leapers, and then there's also the Professional Freelancer, both which are invaluable resources. And for those of you that work in the creative industries and are under 30, I cannot sing the praises of the Roundhouse's work highly enough. They have changed the trajectory of my career and believed in me before I was able to believe in myself. So they kind of doubled down on my ambition. So I'd love to make sure that if you're between 13 and 25 or 18 and 30, that you're looking at the opportunities that they have on offer. If you're looking for people to connect with and you work in the art sector, I'd recommend going along to the What Next meetings, which have been happening online recently. They had a talk by Keir Starmer this morning, 8:30 to 9:30 on Wednesday mornings, that have been taking place via Zoom. They're now breaking for a month, but What Next with a question mark, if you look up What Next question mark with a network, you should be able to find things about them. And other schemes that are brilliant, Arts Emergency, of course. Liberty, who are based in South London, are incredibly supportive and collaborative. And if you're looking for inspiration and events that are wonderful, can I point you to the work of Battersea Arts Centre and the British Library, who I think have been doing consistently some of the most exciting programming in the around talks and performances. If you're looking for a hot dose of inspiration, the two people that have kind of steered my career as kind of as metaphorical mothers are Audre Lorde, and I'd really recommend everyone to take a read of this book. It's called The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House. To those of you on Facebook, I'm just posting that in now, and the link I'm posting means that you don't have to buy it through Amazon, you buy it through an independent bookshop. So that's Audre Lorde, and that's the name of the book, once again, is The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House. And there's a book in that, and there's an essay in that book called Poetry is Not a Luxury, that speaks to all art forms that are remarkable. And then the other resource that I think hopefully you'll find inspiring, if you are ambitious about the transformational potential of the sector, and indeed our need to make sure that the change that we want to see, that the inclusive society that we are building through the arts materialises. The other book I'd encourage you all to read is Hope in the Dark by Rebecca Solnit. I read it when I was working at Julie's Bicycle. It's about why to be hopeful is brave, and why she's got an amazing line about it. To be hope is to be hopeful is to be brave. It's to be courageous. It's to believe that another world is possible. I think we all work in the art sector because we believe that another world is possible. So if you're feeling ground down by lockdown or nervous about the state of the industry, or indeed society more broadly, as I think we all are, I'd really recommend taking a look at that book. So that is called the Hope in the Dark. Whew. It's 22. We've way outstayed our welcome, but for anyone that wants to be in touch or to follow up with me directly, my name is Georgia Attlesey, which is spelt like Attle, like battle, and then S-E-Y. I've got a website. I'm really not on social media, so the website and email address is much easier. I'll post it here on Facebook Live so that anyone can be in touch. But please do be in touch. I'm really happy to have coffees and chat to anyone that's thinking about going into this this field. And if you'd like to find out more about pudding, please just let me know. And hopefully we'll be able to build a more exciting, more nimble, and more optimistic world altogether. So thank you so much for watching. Have wonderful Friday afternoons, and I really look forward to being in touch with some of you again soon. Take care, and thanks to the King's Head Theatre. And don't forget to tune in on Tuesday for the Pappy Show talk, who pulled together the Brilliant Show boys. So can't wait to hear what they've got to say. Make sure you tune in, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you all soon. Take care. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.